Hello, thank you for joining us here at Wagner's Tech Talk. Today we're going to take a look at the Retro Game 300 or RG300. It's an excellent retro gaming device that has a large 3-inch display, which is larger than most of the devices I own. So in this video we're going to go ahead and unbox it. We're going to also take a look at upgrading the firmware, and in the process of that we'll go ahead and play some games and check it out. So let's get started. Alright, let's take a look at the RG300 specifications. On the CPU side, we have a 528 MHz CPU, a 3-inch screen, 128 megabytes of DDR2 RAM, microSD for the firmware, a 32 gig microSD for games and storage with 3007 games, has an 1800 milliamp hour battery, which will give you about 6 hours, and a USB-C cable for charging. Alright, so here we go, the Retro Game 300. Nice. It's got the console, AV cable, charging cable, and a user's manual. There's the side of the box. It's got a 3-inch display, an 1800 milliamp hour battery at 6 hours. Tempered glass, supports a crap load of emulators, which is great. Comes with a microSD card for storage, and some apps for playing music and browsing and stuff. So yeah, that's the Retro Game 300 box. So let's open this booger up. And here we go. Here's the RG300. Yep, we're going to skip right past it for right now. Keep going into the box. Oh, a QC sticker. That's good. I mean, someone looked at it before it shipped. That's always a good thing. Here's a manual. A lot of Chinese stuff. I'm going to just set that aside. Here we have a USB-C cable for the power. Very cool. And this AV cable. More on that later. So yeah, it's video and stereo out. And that's it. Alright, so there's the L and R button, left and right. Very nice placement. There's the power button. The buttons feel really good. Really like the feel of these buttons. There's the select, start. This top button is for the brightness, and the bottom one is like a menu button. Then on the bottom, there's your charging port right there. USB-C connection. There's your AV jack. There's your microSD where all your games are stored. Power again. And over here is your volume control. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and power on the RG300. And it boots rather quickly. Now the first thing to note is the firmware on this particular machine should be the comic theme. That's the latest and greatest at this point in time. So we're going to fix that. We're going to go ahead and remove the back compartment here. Take the battery out. And this will give us access to the firmware, which is stored on yet a microSD card. It's a 16 gig. You want to go ahead and just remove it. I flip it upside down to make it easier for it to fall out. I recommend not using this microSD card to reflash with the latest version. In fact, I put a piece of tape on it so I could tape it to the back cover, so I could always revert back to the original in case anything goes wrong. Here's my 8 gig card. We're going to go ahead and go to this site, links in the description below, and we're going to download the RG300 version 2 firmware right here. Once downloaded, you want to use 7-zip to extract it. So we're going to extract the file. And once extracted, you'll have this IMG file, and this is what we're going to burn to our new microSD. So we're going to go ahead and use Etcher, and we're going to go select the image. There's our image file. And we can double check that the microSD card is the correct one, and yes it is. Make sure you have the right drive letter selected, and hit flash. If you see a bunch of these dialogues, just hit the little close button in the upper right of each one of them. Okay, so now we'll launch the MIDI tool to expand the partition. So we'll select Launch Application. And you'll have a couple of drives here. You want to be sure and pay attention to the drive for the microSD card. And there you'll notice Retro FW. That's the one we want to expand, so we're going to right click on Retro FW. And we'll move up and select Extend. And then we'll see a dialog here. Just drag the little slider all the way to the right to extend to the full size of the microSD card. Click OK. Everything looks good here, so we'll go ahead and click Apply. And click Yes to apply the pending changes. And once that's done, we will have full access to the entire microSD card. Go ahead and click OK and hit the close button in the upper right. Now we'll put in this 8 gig microSD card back into the firmware slot. And we'll go ahead and reinstall the battery and the battery cover with our old microSD firmware. Great! Now let's power it up. Now we have the latest and greatest firmware. Let's take a look. We'll go ahead and go into the Atari 2600, and notice we need to select the location of the ROM files, so we're going to move down to the media folder and then select the second microSD card, then go to ROMs and then select 2600. Now the games that you see on this list I added myself, so they will not show up on yours unless you copy the same over to your microSD card. So just want to make sure that's clear. Alright, so we're going to fire up Asteroids on the Atari 2600. I played this game so much when I was young. For hours and hours. Alright, so now we will move on to MAME. MAME for all. Okay, for this one, we'll browse to the directory just like we did with the Atari 2600. So we'll go up to the very root, go down to Media, then we'll select the second microSD card again. And then go down to ROMs. And we shall select MAME. Now, just like with the Atari 2600, I added these games as well. So they were not pre-installed. To copy those files, you simply remove the microSD from the left-hand side, just pop it out, and plug it into your PC and copy the files. Alright, so now we'll go into Asteroids, and when you see this dialog, you just press the controller button left and right, and then you can go in, hit select, put a quarter in, start, and you're playing Asteroids. Very cool. If you hit start and select, you can go into Input General and move down to UI Escape. and press the two left and right shoulder buttons to exit. And that way you can remap it if you want. That's what I did anyway. So now you just hold both of those to exit the game. Alright, so now we'll bring up Galaga. And I want to show you something rather interesting here. When you first start it up, you'll notice all you see is the lower portion of the screen. You can't see the top portion with the score and everything. So to correct that, what we're going to do is launch it again, but where it says the video aspect, we're going to downscale. Scale aspect, downscale. And then what it's going to do is it's going to position it vertically so everything fits on the screen. And now you can play the game. Just a little tip I wanted to share with you. By the way, if you find this video helpful, please click like and subscribe if you wish. I try to release a new video every Sunday. It doesn't always work out that way. Alright, so now we're going to fire up Joust. This is another game I used to love to play. I still do. That's why I'm buying this handheld, so I can play Joust. It makes perfect sense to be flying around on an ostrich with a javelin. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Gameboy Emulator. And we'll do the same thing, go to Media. By the way, after you launch the emulator with the ROMs the first time, it will remember these locations. So in case you're wondering, you don't have to do this every time you play a game. You only have to do it the first time you're launching the emulator. And since we reflashed the firmware, of course, you'll have to do it. Now another thing to notice here, notice the screen is rather small, kind of postage size stamp size. Well, we want it a little bit bigger. We got a big screen here. Let's make use of it. So we're going to go down to Settings, press A here, and we're going to go to Select Scaler. And we're going to play with these settings. Select something and press A till we get it to the size that we want. And that's pretty close. We'll go ahead and make it the full screen. So we'll go down to Full Screen Smooth. We'll back out, save the settings, and say A, yes. And now when we go back into our game, we have a full-size screen. This is awesome. You can play Game Boy full-sized. Alright, so let's briefly take a look at asteroids while we're in here. We'll hit start. Yeah, I don't know what all these buttons do just yet, so I can't remember from emulator to emulator. Alright, so we'll just go ahead and stop this one and move on to another emulator. How about that? Alright, so one thing I want to tell you about is this Intellivision emulator here. I have not been able to get it to work. So, I don't know. I don't know if it works or if it's supposed to work or if it's my ROM set or what, but I just want to let you know that I have not been able to get it to work. I posted questions on Reddit and they have not been able to get it to work, so we're just going to say the Intellivision emulator does not work at this point. If you find out differently, please comment below. Alright, so now let's go into Sega MegaDrive. Now, I never owned a Sega in the past, so I never played these games, and I'm not good at all. My apologies for those of you who love this particular console. It just wasn't one I ever grew up with. But it seems to play rather decently, from what I can tell anyway. all of these emulators have an option for frame skipping, so if it's not playing as smooth as you remember, you can add the frame skip, which will speed things up a little bit. Alright, so now let's move on to Nintendo, or the NES. And we'll play a quick little level of Super Mario. Just want to give you a good idea of the type of games that you can play on here, as well as what they look like. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Super Nintendo. And we're launching Donkey Kong Country. This is one I used to play quite a bit. And it looks pretty much just like I remember. Seems to be a little bit sluggish here. I remember it moving a little bit more fluidly. So we're going to go ahead and go into the settings here and see if we can't speed this up just a little bit. Let's select and start, go to settings, see where it says frame skip. We'll go ahead and set that to 1. And we'll go ahead and show the frames per second so we can get a better idea of the frame rate that we're getting. And we'll go back, save. Let's see if that plays a little better. That does seem a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's not bad. Alright, so now we'll try the PS1 emulator. And again, I never owned a PS1 console, so you're just going to have to look and see how this compares to what you remember. I'm going to go in here to the GPU settings. And we'll go ahead and show the frames per second. And we're getting about 39, 38 frames per second. So that's not bad. Of course, 60 by 60 would be wonderful, but I guess this is pretty decent. Now, not all games are going to play as well as this is on the PS1. There's other games that I've tried that are just almost impossible to play, such as this one. This is Crash Bandicoot. And yeah, it's virtually unplayable. And this is with some frame skipping. I think I have it set for 2 frames per second. Okay, let's move on to some of these other applications that are pre-installed. The M Player. We'll go in here. I converted a few videos here. I can't get a darn thing to load in this player. Even the videos, the original videos, I have them in an ORI folder here. I can't get them to play either. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe it works for somebody. If you have any ideas, please put them in the comments below. I don't understand Chinese, so I assume that's what this is. I can't use the music player. So yeah, I'm kind of done with these. Alright, I'm hitting the right button, L and R buttons up at the top. And we're going to scroll over to Quake II and give this one a check. It looks pretty good here. The demo screen seems to be holding the frames per second fairly well. And we'll go ahead and start up a game. Got just a few things to let you know. The AV cable does not work. I tried hooking it up to this external monitor, had absolutely no luck. Also, be very careful when you're popping out the microSD card here. It does launch very well. What I recommend is using your other finger to cover it as you're pushing it down into the slot. Alright, so what are my thoughts on the RG300? On the pro side, we have a large screen. Older games play well. The controls are very responsive. It's upgradable firmware. It has an excellent L and R button placement, an impressive battery life. 3,007 games are pre-installed. Game state can be saved and loaded. On the con side, some emulators do not appear functional, such as the Intellivision. Some emulators require frame skip. The video out does not work, the music player and video player are a mess, and the display is hard to view in daylight. I hope you enjoyed this review of the RG300. It's an impressive device for just a little under $60. I'll put a link in the description below on where you can purchase one if you're interested. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click the like, subscribe if you wish, and we'll see you soon.